Hi, Shashi.
Hi, Gita.
So, as you know, this is a project undertaking, questioning, challenging, but deeply understanding the idea of masculinity. So, in part of feminist science studies, we tend to think that the questions are only about women. But if we extend, we see that the culture of science largely is what we call in our women's studies is a very masculine culture. It's aggressive, competitive, about power, control, nature and people. So in this context, what I thought is we could start by examining the question of how practitioners of science, men practitioners of science, actually embody this or live this identity of being a man of science. So I looked up and we know that the idea of scientist actually came up in a very interesting way by William Whewell to argue saying scientist should be a term applicable to people, men, women. Because before that, the idea of man of science was much more predominant.
No, thanks for taking this initiative. So, just to add to this discussion, any societal where there is an organized structure,
Yes.
which is some kind of a hierarchical, organized, and a controlled the structures. It could be political system, executive system, institutional organization. It's all derived from same patriarchal biases and prejudices, and that's exactly why the way we are in the society. Whereas more self-help groups, local self-help groups, in the rural villages, even in urban areas, they are not organized with a control system. They are simply a self-organized group. There, these issues many times won't come. So it's very important that you are doing this, because as scientists, we are supposed to come out of all the prejudices, past traditions, rituals, cultures. None of this should influence what we do. And if we are carrying those, traditions and prejudices and cultural biases, then we are not scientists.
That's exactly what, the important thing is that science is, or scientific institutions or scientific cultures are supposed to provide correctives. But on the other hand, they're also as much a part of the same societal structures that we all live in. So they're bound to sort of mirror some of that. So, as you know, Shashi, I'm trying to look at the construction of this idea of man of science on the basis of on 4 axes of separation that the construction of this idea does. The man of science, for example, is not supposed to be a man of emotion, is not supposed to be political, is not supposed to be a man of faith, is not supposed to be, or is expected in many ways to compartmentalize art from science. So on these axes, we'll construct this conversation of today.
Sure.
So thank you, Shashi.
Happy.
So L S Shashidhara, the director of NCBS, as you all know, is a developmental biologist and has been a very important institution builder. He's been part of setting up the ISER in Pune. He's been very involved with the Ashoka University, and now he's shaping the NCBS. So we'll go back, Shashi. Let's look at some of your earliest recollections. Where did you grow up, your childhood, your family background, your schooling?
Okay, so really, I grew up in a joint family the first 8 to 9 years of my life, and a very large joint family, and it's definitely men-dominated families, both in terms of numbers and also in terms of obviously the hierarchy. Then my father started moving out from the village to other places for a job.
Where was this village, Shashi?
So the village is very close to Chikmagalur. It's a part of Chikmagalur district, in the Western Ghats, just to the other end of the Western Ghats towards the eastern side. And a village called Lingadhalli, my surname. In South India, typically the village name or your town where you are born becomes your second name or last name. So I was born and then grew up for some years over there. Went to school with cousins and with a very large joint family. There were like 20 plus people in the house. And there were my mother and 3 other women in the family who were mothers were the ones who were doing all the work.
Household work.
And the older men was getting, go to agriculture field or doing some job. And most of my cousins are all very different stages of school or college or university. So at the time when none of my cousins are working, when I was growing up. So in a way it's still, 2 stages of generation.
Right.
The parental generation and the one. By the time I was born, my grandparents were not there. So I am not experienced having lived with grandparents. So my father's side, my mother's grandparents were still alive.
Okay.
But again, typical of Indian system, always live with the paternal.
And so the joint family comprised of your uncles and their families.
Only uncles, but we didn't have, there are 2 sisters of my father. They were married and they were in somewhere else.
Living separate.
So the giant family had only the children of the 4 brothers, 4 brothers.
Right.
So, and then when I started, when we started have a smaller family where only my parents and children, we were 5 of us, 4 brothers and 1 daughter, younger one.
You have how many sisters?
4 brothers, including me, 5 siblings.
Sister.
5 siblings, 4 males, and the last one is a sister.
Okay.
And of course, she was more pampered, always. And all the 4 brothers and the parents together.
And did all 4 of you feel that she was being more pampered?
No, we ourselves were pampering her. So in a way, we are part of that process.
Indulgence.
Really,
Yes.
loved her, Otherwise, it's definitely a family dominated by men when I grew up. But coming to the context, it's largely influenced. Exactly. So while we all loved her and respected mother, and my mother had 3 sisters, they're all, even today, we are very close to aunts, right? And while they were advising us, where there were discussions on matters of literature or politics or music, even history, typically we could argue a lot. Right? With our father, it was more, one-sided. And whatever he says, he was considered as the final,
discipline came from the father.
Word on the discussion. In a way, it's either because of some distance between the father and the children on those days, it was because it was considered as that as a father, you're not supposed to be too close to your children. You're not supposed to hold them.
Too warm.
There was no physical contact. He would never, hold us. So it was always, of course, when my sister was born, which was at that time he carried her a lot, but that she was the only one who had that opportunity. So in a way, we grew up in a family where the whatever your fathers tell, it becomes the final word. You cannot change the decision. You cannot argue anything. But only when I went to the college, then he was very well read. Although he was an engineer, he was very well read literature, Kannada literature, English literature, poetry. He loved poetry. He also did science book, particularly, evolution. And in that context, we started discussing, an argument started only when I started going to the university.
With him?
With
your father.
With him at home. Otherwise, it was most of the discussion. Mother was well read, although she was not on a job. He was a housemaker. But we used to discuss and argue a lot. She was to read a lot of Bengali literature, and we used to discuss Sharat Chandra or Tagore and kind of thing. But
so what were these discussions with your father when you started going to college?
So, for example, if you had brothers, let's say, in the sitting at dinner, we were discussing something, and then he would not say too many things. At some point, he will say, "No, this is what Nehru did, and that's how it is like this." Or this is Gandhiji, this is what he said. Finally, while we, many things with retrospective, what he said, we always think is correct because he was more read, and he would have known Nehru and Gandhiji much better than us because we are all only through 20 years later,
Later,
right?
yeah.
Whatever we read about them. But he lived a time and he could have seen them in real time or at the same time. So obviously, but even then, it's a relationship, right? And or if, for example, now let's have dinner together
Right.
today, and there's no argument about it. With your
Right.
mother, you could do that. No, you go ahead and I'll have it later. No, I want to eat this one first and then another one. There was no such discussion with the father. It was always with the mother.
Okay.
So that relationship is influenced a lot, right? All of us. Tomorrow, when we grow up,
all four of you.
try to be. You try to imitate your father,
Yes.
right? You want to be like him. And when you want to be like him, typically you want to become authoritative. And that authoritative, it's not necessarily because you have the ability to become authoritative. You simply because you want to be like him. So when you have your children, or when you start working in an office or somewhere, when you deal with your colleagues, right, invariably that hierarchy comes into your mind, and that's how
So, do you find yourself
most families are in India context, I'm sure.
Yeah, surely, and maybe not even as affectionate and warm as your family seems to be. Often the patriarchal structures are quite rigid and strict, even for the girls. But as you were saying, so what did your sister do then eventually? Did she pursue an education much like you?
She, of course, pursued education. She was also did some additional courses, and she always wanted to work. She wanted to be independent, and she pursued a job also.
Okay.
And although there was no opposition, at the same time, it's like that. Okay, you do this. There was no such kind of active support. But she managed. She was more independent for sure.
So, Shashi, on reflection, would you say that you are able to detect some sort of obvious differences in the way, say, four of you brothers were raised and the way
Oh yeah, very much.
You do?
So there are two ways of looking at it. My father, his level of engagement with us was more academic, not related to our professional life, right? At the same time, his affection or his concerns are very obvious and certain when there's a crisis. For example, if I fall sick of typhoid or my brother had some problem, and we could see him really shaken, right? And but he may not show that, obviously, right?
Yeah.
When it comes to our professions, it was very obvious that what he would think about us, and based on some words he would say, or what we would think of ourselves, that we were not thinking anything other than having an independent career, right? Outside the family system, right? You are never thinking that how will I manage this, right? We're outside my parents' house. How will I manage reading something which I'm not used to, right? But those concerns never came to us. It's again the kind of confidence you get in the kind of family you live. But my sister had to ask these questions to herself. Will I be able to do my master's in another town away from living with parents? We never asked those questions to ourselves. We never asked those questions to our parents.
Yeah.
It just took that decision. There was no objection. There was no opposition. We just moved on.
Do you think some of that has changed in the world around us?
Definitely has changed a lot. And for example, my daughter, she doesn't ask anything from us. She doesn't even, tell us where she is, what she's doing. We'll come to know in some, conversation that she's okay doing something in Delhi, or she's now today in Lucknow doing some experiments or something.
Yeah. And you're comfortable with that?
Yeah, I'm good.
Yeah. Took some time to get comfortable with that?
We are still concerned about her health or in
Of
some
course.
security, safety and things. But we know she can manage. We are very confident.
Right. So, take us a little bit into your professional. How did you how did you choose to do science? How did you get into biology? What was that journey?
Okay, so as I told you, my father was somewhat academic in terms of reading and also encouraging us to read. When he was encouraging, obviously, he would bring in lots of books.
Yes.
Right? And many of those books are really related to inquiry.
Okay.
Right? And inquiry literature, right? For example, who wrote what, why, right? It could be criticism, critique of Mahabharata, the critique of Ramayana, to the narrative style of prose poetry of different,
Okay.
writers, and also some science books like books on evolution or Sigmund Freud, that kind of stuff. And it was not like what Freud said. It's more about discussion of what aspect of it is real, and what aspect could be his imagination, or what is kind of a thing. So argument about his work, and that sort of helped me to say that I should get into some research. Research, but not necessarily science. Right? In fact, I wanted to do either history or some literature related.
I see.
In the beginning, mostly history, not so much literature. Literature is only to read at that time.
But you were interested
that I would get into research in literature, although I did read some of the books on, for example, comparative analysis of the East tragedies of Western and Indian tragedies.
In tragedies,
right? So it could be Greek tragedies or Shakespeare and also some of the Indian playwrights. But so getting into research was somewhat I knew
you wanted to do that.
And but we the transition in India is usually 11th and 12th.
Yes.
That's when you decide which one you want to pursue.
Which way you want to go.
So in my case, I think the influence of my father and my two elder brothers, one did engineering. My father was a civil engineer. My brother also was a civil engineer, eldest. The second brother did physics major.
Okay.
So in a way, I thought I would do science, and in 11th and 12th.
Okay.
And once you do science, then your option is 3.
You choose.
Basic science, engineering or medicine kind of thing. And then after my +2, typically you apply to all kinds of places. And the first one was admission to Agriculture University to do BSc in agriculture. And my family was anyway, my grandparents, my uncles, both sides, my father's and mother's side, most of them are farmers. So farming was something which knew, and some of my cousins had degree in agriculture.
Right.
So it was not alien to me. So I just simply took it.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay. That was the beginning.
Yeah. That's the beginning. Once you go to the college, and interestingly, Agriculture University those days, even today, the curriculum is one of the best. It's in true sense, liberal arts curriculum. We had economics, we had sociology, history.
Really?
Yeah. Marketing, extension, and all kinds of things, in addition to core agriculture subjects.
Okay.
Yeah. What attracted me is genetics and evolution, and that's where I majored in both my undergraduate and postgraduate. Because it was research integrated teaching, like what ISERS later was established to integrate research and teaching at undergraduate level. Agriculture University is always doing this. None of our engineering college, even IITs, were not doing this. But agriculture universities were set up by design to have research and teaching integrated.
Together.
Yeah. Not only faculty do research and do teaching, all undergraduate students also must do some research.
I see.
And post-graduation anyway was mostly thesis based.
Okay.
And that's where I got into research, and that caught on to me, and then I continued.
Do you remember whether, roughly speaking, what were the proportion of girls and boys in this college?
Okay, agriculture is exceptional.
Yes,
absolutely.
It is.
No gender parity of any sense in amongst the 200 plus faculty on those days in the university. There was one woman faculty. In my batch, previous 10 batches, not a single girl student. It was all men. Only subsequent batches we had girl students in agriculture.
Why do you think that was the case, Shashi?
I think there could be two reasons. One is it's all residential. Most agriculture universities are fully residential. The second is perhaps parents thought that, because you also have to do field work, maybe I don't know what they thought about one. But there was, it's still largely men dominated. Even now it's slightly better, But compared to general science or other fields, engineering is improved now, but it's
So
still
how-
maybe 20%. I don't think
Yeah.
it's more than 20%.
Yeah. So tell me, how is it the experience of actually studying or being in a space for what, 4 years?
4-year BSc and 2-year masters.
Yeah,
6 years.
so almost 6 years in a space which is largely male dominated. How is it for you as a man? Was it difficult? What kind of hierarchies existed within that space?
No. So
Because the
I don't-
male female hierarchy was hardly there, right?
No.
But
So
I'm sure-
you don't see. First of all, if it's almost, if let's say if there is a gender gap, right, and there are fewer female students or faculty versus large number of them, you start seeing the disparity. You start seeing the why things are like this kind of thing.
Yes.
But the 6 years I was there, these questions even didn't come to my mind.
I
because there are hardly any.
Yeah.
I wouldn't see, right?
Did
anybody.
other disparities become clear? Of
Other
class
disparities,
or caste?
of course. The urban versus rural, the language differences and the caste differences were more apparent.
Yes.
In fact,
yes.
the casteism was practiced in the hostel.
How
to our-
can you remember?
So people wouldn't, many times they don't want to share the room because the hostel everybody 3 or 4 students per room, sometimes 3, sometimes 4, and they want to have their own choice, and
Right.
invariably it will be according to certain caste or certain kinds of language
Right.
given.
Right.
It was obviously they can't do it openly, and I know there was an undercurrent of casteism.
There was.
And so the reason we could discuss some of these things also openly in those days was compared to today's university campuses. Those days there used to be a lot of argument because of our influence of Russian literature on very different aspect of class differences. Right? Once you start discussing class difference, you start discussing differences first.
Right.
That's where the casteism difference was also discussed.
So did a lot of these discussions happen in your
Discussion
college
happened.
lives?
Some of us were very actively involved in those arguments and discussions, and but it all became an academic exercise.
So there was
action,
no movement as
no
such.
movement,
of
no
first
action related
only
to this one.
largely academic. Yeah. So coming back to, so when was it that you said that you were really not sensitive or you were not exposed to the gender gap as such in the college? And when did you start becoming sensitive to this question?
So, 2 places. Once I had a short stint at CCMB in Hyderabad.
Okay.
And when Dr. Bhargav was the director at that time, and then Balasubramanian was the deputy director, both stalwarts. And some of these discussions were happening in the campus
Okay.
at CCMB, although I was there
This
for a
was
short
which
time.
year, Shashi?
I was there in 1988 for about 6 months
88.
as a
Okay.
PhD student, but I left and then went to Cambridge to do my PhD. 88, February to August, in 8 months. During those 8 months, there were at least few such discussions. And many things that mentioned, whether it is related in the field of art, in the field of music, in the field of science, in general in the society, discrepancy in the wages, many of these topics were being discussed. First time I was really, started appreciating those topics. Until then, I had not read so much. We had read the biography of some people, like, the work of Iravati Karve kind of a thing, but they were all, celebrated. And Indira Gandhi was the Prime Minister for most of my early growing time, between when I started using newspaper, 1970 onwards, 1970 to 84.
Yeah, 84.
14 years. Every day in the newspaper, half the paper is about Indira Gandhi, right? So you could actually see that how we appreciate someone is because she was like other men. She was strong,
Masculine characteristic.
masculine character. Like even today, typically what happens is you do consider that the holding on to the power. And wielding the power is considered as the real leader when it comes to leadership. You don't appreciate what Gandhiji did without having to exercise power. Or more recently, Manmohan Singh, for example. Manmohan Singh could achieve much more than any other prime minister in the recent days, but he didn't have to wield power. Right? Someone can use soft power to achieve. And that's where I could start during the discussion at CCMB, and much later I went to Cambridge. That's where I started understanding these issues much more, and part of discussions is where the difference between so-called masculinity or femininity is not related to this is created, this gender gap or perception, because this is where you keep the power, and that person has to exercise the power and to visibly exercise the power, and be more aggressive. Another person is less aggressive, more accommodating, much more more listening than saying things. It happens at home also, right? In most places, at mother versus father kind of thing. Only after reading more about other literature, including Gandhi's biography and his writings and his, how people perceived him during his time, realized that I think what we are missing out in the society is the importance of, having
non-aggressive, non-violent.
Non-violence in the sense tolerance, right, and ability to reconcile, ability to hear and then come to a consensus. Right. All of these things are so important in a society.
Right.
Because everybody is living in an artificial society. Perhaps if we have evolved as a human species with certain kinds of behavioral traits, but we have evolved much beyond that after language evolved, and then the way we built larger societies post in the last 12,000 years. We had to come out of all these prejudices, and to come out of prejudices is where gender equity is the first one to happen. Because any other, people always say gender related equity is different than the caste related. But I think we have to fix this first one, because it's there in every home. First we have to fix this, and later we have to worry about other inequalities.
So, Shashi, let me ask you that, you said that we need to have these kind of more compassionate, more tolerant ways of being, but also ways of leadership and things. Now, what has been your experience? Very often these attributes or these qualities are seen as weak, signs of weakness rather than strength, right? And in very operational terms, you've been in leadership positions across different kind of institutions. How have you navigated this?
No. So before I come to that, the first part, see, the way we are looking at women leadership is how you are still comparing with, there is a set standard what is called leadership traits, which is what most men have. And then women have to become like them. See, I'm trying to sort of come out of that complete prejudice. Men has to change. It's not that women have to change and become like men.
No, both perhaps need to read.
I don't think so. I don't know. That can be a subject for argument. What I'm saying is there should be something which is a general trait that is required in a larger society with multiple people doing multiple things. And then how do you keep this organization or a society in an organized way without any conflict? The best way is to have those traits. Those traits are more in women than in men, right? But then trying to make women like men, you are not going to change the society.
Absolutely.
That's not going to be, improving the gender gap tomorrow, because you are going to be increasing the inequity in some other way, right? Because finally, when you say leadership, it's 1 versus 100, right? So that 100 can have 30 women and 70 men. That will continue to be there.
Correct.
Just bringing 1 or 2 women on the and the Vice Chancellor at director level. Doesn't mean that you have changed the system.
And what you're suggesting somewhere is that the norms of leadership or the norms of what is valuable need to be examined, whether by men or women or for men or women.
So the question about how I managed, I don't think I have managed well, to be honest. I don't think I have behaved in the way I'm telling you how one should behave. I tried to be as accommodative, as tolerant, and to diverse views, for example, if a faculty says, I don't know anything about purchase procedures, I don't want to, do any of these things, but you are institutional responsibility, you have to somehow manage to get me things done. Most directors or head of the department say, it's not my job, you have to somehow get it done, your work, if you can't do it, then you will be, in trouble. But I have managed to help them. Okay, I understand you are good in your research, perhaps you are very poor in administrative work. Let's handle the administrative in a different way, and you will be fully supported the way what you want to do. So obviously we need to accommodate, but beyond that, I don't think I also raised my voice. I also become authoritative sometimes. I've also said my decision will be final decision. So I made those calls sometimes. But I try to be as tolerant and accommodative as possible. Compassionate, I don't know how to define it many times, whether I'm compassionate. One way you can say that even today, I'll never ask anybody to apply for leave because you are had to go because your mother is not well or you are feeling not well and something. But if the system demands it, you said you do whatever the system asks. If you ask me personally, you can go without having to apply for leave. I'd never try to do what's called, you'll cut the salary if you're absent for 2 minutes and 2
which
days.
Can happen at other
Such kind of things, if you consider that as compassionate, it's okay.
So, at some point or the other, have you felt as in various leadership roles with your colleagues and others, did you feel somewhere or do you still feel somewhere that there is somehow a slip happens into gendered ways of being? Do you get a sense that you can also sometimes become patriarchal in your ways of dealing, or and how do you correct yourself on that?
No, I that's told you, right? Many times I have sort of behaved in the same patriarchal, way, because two reasons. One is it's become a sort of integral to my one, because that's how I grew up. Very difficult to come out of it. However conscious you want to be, sometimes you say something which is very obviously patriarchal. But sometimes with my family too, right? I had to be frank. So I changed my job 3 times, as you pointed out. Hyderabad to Pune, Pune to Delhi, and back to now Bangalore. And all the 3 times, it's me who changed the job, not my wife. Right? My wife changed the job because she had to change the job because of me. Right? It's that I didn't change the job, or I say I will not change the job because she allowed us to change the job. So this we of course discuss at home. When we discussed home, she accommodated, because we can't simply say, oh, she was okay with this. It's not that right. But the question here is, would I have said, if she said, she did say once that don't take up this job, I will not come. I didn't take up. But very often I say, I'm interested in taking up job. Is it okay? Shall we do that? And then obviously she will say yes, and then you say no. If it will affect you. Should I? I did think for myself. I was think for herself. Always thinking for myself. Right? This is the patriarchal
for your career. So let's shift a little bit now to these 4 axes. 5. So more generally, Shashi, what do you think is the place and role of emotion in human life, in your life as a professional scientist in science? Is emotion not devalued? Because in the world that we live in, the scientific, dominated by scientific reason, we often think that scientists should keep emotion out. How do you respond to that idea?
Well, I still think the same, but there are 2 aspects to it, right? our human relationship is sort of built on emotions, right? So obviously we should not do away with emotion and then still have a relationship. How can you have it, right? You can't have a friendly relationship with your colleagues. You can't have family relationship. None of that.
Right.
It's not that we should some completely give up on emotions, but where it matters. That's why sometimes we have to live two lives as a scientist. Because if you are emotionally connected to something, an experiment, you will invariably biased. Or you are emotionally connected to your hypothesis, you will never be able to accept that your hypothesis is wrong.
Contrary idea.
Right? So emotions, in that way, it's it's no in our profession. But when it comes to dealing with your colleagues, dealing with your students, you are dealing with your family, all other matters, obviously you have to have, because finally those are human relationships.
Yeah. What about the relationship with science itself? Very often people talk about that relationship being one of passion, of interest. How do you think that works out? That is there an emotional relationship with the work that people
passion
do?
is another version of emotion, right?
Exactly.
So obviously we all say I'm passionate about science, I'm passionate about research, I'm passionate to teach science, physics, mathematics, whatever it is, or my own very small domain of research that I do. I mean, it's there, but the reason is it's required, again, that is related to being, able to invest time and effort, right? That
Sometimes
emotional connection. Why are we, for example, we invest time and effort and everything on our children or with our family members? Because we are emotionally connected. If you are emotionally connected, you won't do the same thing. Similarly, if you are emotionally connected to your friends and colleagues, you will be, your behavior also will be appropriate. Same way, if you don't have an emotional connection to your profession, what is the reason that you will come in the morning to the office or to your lab or you to this institution? Or why will you even talk to a PhD student about the subject that you are interested in? So that's part of emotion is fine. Where emotion should not get infiltrated to design of your hypothesis, your experiments, or framing hypothesis and designing experiments. These things should not be there. So in a way, you have to keep emotions as a human being everywhere, but as a scientist, in the way you ask questions, the way you are trying to address those questions, you cannot have an emotional relationship.
Is that possible?
Difficult. It's possible.
It is possible?
It's possible.
So, why I'm pushing this point a little more, let me just try to do that. See, when we actually valorize and glorify the passion for doing science, right? And we almost do it to the exclusion of everything else. Men are expected to not devote time to family, not devote time to this, interest or that, distress. Passionate means to the exclusion of everything else, you have to do science. But this passion often does not come out of an emotional connection. I mean, you're saying that we are encouraged to keep that emotional connection out. Doesn't that create a sort of a dilemma?
I understand what you're saying. In fact, if I let's say, trade-off with having and not having emotions, I would say we need emotions at every level, except one small component of a profession where you are actually, that's what
over-attachment is what you're saying.
Over-attachment to your hypothesis.
To an idea.
That an idea. If that's not there, in everywhere else you need emotions. That's why you cannot be, as you said, you're so passionate or so emotional about your work, you can say ignore everything else. That's not correct, because that level of emotion is also required. Yeah. Right?
So,
because if you are so emotional or passionate about something, you will invariably also get into the same problem of having emotions on your ideas. Then you start slippery slope.
I see.
As a scientist.
So what you're trying to say is that an over-attachment can actually, sort of deflect attention from other things in life, which are also equally important. Is that something that you're saying? Okay. So now, Shashi, you've been in leadership roles. You've in various institutions. I wanted to ask you the question on, the man of science is often seen as a man who should be apolitical. All right, who should be not being involved in any political positioning, because political positioning is often seen as bringing in bias. And we've always talked about science should be free of these kind of biases. It should be free from governments. It should be free from control. Is this an ideal that we've moved very far away from? Is there a lot of control of science from the world of politics?
So I think that notion about scientist is, I guess, early 19th or late 18th century, where science was not sponsored by the
Governments,
system, right?
or
It was not a state sponsored. It's all individual passionate. Somehow they raise resources and do it. Whether it's Darwin or Einstein or Galileo, they all did that, right? But modern science is all state sponsored. And so why state sponsored science? One is whatever you do, it will be useful for the society. And in the country where it is done, it will be useful for the economy of that country, whether it is basic, applied, translational. Applied and translation is very obvious, even basic science. So invariably, they support. Now, once state is sponsoring the science, there is always a political interference, there is always a bureaucratic interference, there is always an executive interference, and we cannot avoid that. Now, as a scientist, when we say you shouldn't be apolitical, what it means is you should not be biased to one or other and without reason. But you should be on the right side, when not at the right side of the right wing, what you call the right side, in the sense, right side of the truth, right? And if, for example, as a scientist, I should be a little bit more vocal even to oppose any injustice, social injustice. I may not be an activist because I may have more into
but
science,
as a public
doing
intellectual
research.
of sorts.
But as a public intellectual, you should be, vocal about any injustice.
So what stops scientists from doing that?
I don't know. Many times, because they are state sponsored, their work is more important for them, and they are more worried about the research money
Success.
or other things, or success or whatever. Success depends on the money sometimes. But many injustices are happening. They don't say anything about it. Obviously, you may not be able to do anything, but you should at least should not be so quiet that people consider that, oh, if intellectual also accepting this without opposing, perhaps that's the norm.
So, like you said in the earlier part, that it's often begins with home and family. In a similar sense, then we're talking about power and of governments and state control, but there is power and politics in society, inside science also. Right? So how, and I'm sure there must have been many instances in your own career where you have had to address questions of injustice within science. How do you do that? Say, for instance, if I were to say, I don't know whether you would think of the fact that women don't get awarded as much as men get awarded. That seems like a very obvious injustice.
No? So where we can interfere or where we can actually do something about it, we should be doing, and I'm personally doing it. For example, as you said, identifying women for nominating for awards, or a fellowship of academies. These are the things I actually proactively do it. Similarly, in identifying women in very different, for leadership roles, if you want to consider leadership in the way I have mentioned, then in other injustice, you have to be vocal about it. It could be against minority, against the caste, whatever it is, right? In the name of caste or religion, or some injustice is done. At least we should say that it is injustice. It's not something is acceptable, right? And but you will not be able to go after and be able to change it. But then, you also have your priorities in job versus other things. But that's okay. But at least, there should be some resistance to these injustices.
Right.
Otherwise, the future generation will continue to accept this as a norm, right? The same thing with the context of gender gap, right? We need to do something about it. Girl may be my student, a woman would be my colleague, or who could be my in the hierarchy to whom I'm reporting to. At every level, I'll have to interact, and I should look at this in the context of.
So, do you find there are a lot of hurdles to this kind of, promotion of the question of social justice within scientific organizations?
There is. For example,
What
I've already
are the
noticed, for
hurdles?
example, in multiple places where you try to put someone as a dean or someone as for nominating for an award or something, the first question is, oh, she's an arrogant, right? But if you try to say the same thing to a man, they'll say, oh, that guy has a leadership quality, right? And
Exactly.
these are the,
Yeah.
which is,
Yeah.
of course, is very obvious, trivial, nonsensical
Yeah.
prejudices. But
I think women are now becoming more conscious within science also, hopefully. No? That will also. The next thing we need to ask is a very important question, Shashidhara, as we all know in the development of modern Western science. The question of religion became central, and the opposition of religion and science was central to the making of the man of science. The man of science could not be a man of faith. So, how has it been for you? What one do you see the relationship between faith and science, and more importantly, are you a believer?
yeah, so exactly, I agree that, as you said, science is a pursuit of absolute truth using certain methods in which you had to be as unbiased as possible. You frame an hypothesis, and you frame hypothesis, you actually try to prove that you are wrong. What you want to prove is the opposite of your hypothesis. It's called null hypothesis. So all your experiment were supposed to be designed to prove that null hypothesis is correct. If null hypothesis had turned out to be correct, and that means your hypothesis is wrong. So if you are really extreme religious and you have a faith in religion or some supernatural power, invariably you will say you have a faith that your hypothesis is correct. Then you would all your subsequent experiments and logic and how you argue, how you write your manuscript, how you try to teach people would be based on that bias. So the faith and science will not go together, right? And faith-based, take obvious thing, right? You simply say, because 1 billion people are saying this is what our faith is, this is belief, right? And that's exactly what happened to Galileo, right? Because even today, 7 billion people on Earth have not seen Earth moving around the sun. It's the other way around. Now, if that's a faith based on which all our religious rituals are all made, that's how our mythology says, our script says. Now you can't change it just because you have a way of telling that it's this Earth which is moving around the sun and not the other way around. Then how can you even do anything in science if everything has to be because there is a faith and that faith is dogma and you cannot change it.
But we do believe in authority, right? Even in science, we give some credence to. We put our faith even in science.
No, that's actually authority also should not be there in science. How can it be?
You don't believe?
No, it is there. I'm saying that it's there, but not say that we believe in authority. If it is there, if for example, just because some Nobel laureate says it's there, as you said, right? And if someone is an accomplished scientist, and because that scientist said, people assume that it is correct. Or if the Nobel laureate says, if a Nobel laureate is asked questions unrelated to science also many times, unrelated to his or her area of research, and see what's your opinion on your brain function and everything. There's that authoritative attitude is there in science too, in the scientific community, which is wrong. Right? It doesn't mean that it is correct. It's actually wrong. We should not do that.
Okay, so Shashi, are you an atheist?
I am, yeah.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I do respect religious belief in the family. My mother was extremely orthodox and religious person. What I was opposing was mostly her attitude. In case her religious beliefs harms others, whereas I actually used to go and take her to every possible temple she wanted to see. I never opposed or even supported that, and because that's what she grew up, and without that she would be very restless and emotionally stressed. I don't want to actively pull out people from religion's ways, but reasoning, if they want to come out, is fine. I'm not an activist in that.
So, Shashi, if I may ask, a lot of people who also start off as being atheist at some point, either because of deep crisis, personal, turn to religion or faith for strength. So, I'm curious to know how, when you face crisis in your life of any kind, what do you turn to? Where do you get your strength, your solace from? If not the idea of God or religion, where do you get your strength from?
Yeah, so the thing is, if you have the realization, right? It's not a confidence, it's not a faith, it's not a feeling of security. It's a realization of certain cause and effect relationship. And because of these things, this happened. And if you do these things, this is how it will improve. But again, there is always a question mark. It may or may not improve. It could be financial stress, could be health related, or whatever it is, right? And the only way to manage this is having an emotional connection with the family and yourself.
With people.
Yeah. So I don't think there's anything else new to. For example, if
That's
my
interesting.
mother died, right? As a biologist, I knew exactly what it means.
Yeah.
Death means, right? But that doesn't mean that I, can be,
Detached
or expressionless. Of course, it affected me for several weeks, particularly first 2 weeks. But it's also, I knew and I had to go through this process. The only way we could do is because we're all family,
Right.
together for 2 weeks in the same house. We managed that.
Right.
We're talking to each other and
Right.
just seeing each other.
Also, in most cultures, for example, religion provides some sort of a moral compass, no, of doing something which is right, doing something which is right. How do you get your moral compass from? From
Again,
where do you get it?
this is a misconception. One is, coming to the previous one. One more point is the emotional support that we get from each other as a family very often will help us to come out of it. Basically, it's just, see, the thing is, everybody says, whether religious or atheist, they will say you cannot change what happened, or you can't change the so-called destiny. They say you can't change, you cannot undo something which happened. For example, particularly death, you can't undo, right? So what's the point? Everybody says the only way you can do is put the blame or the reason on God, or put the blame or reason on the natural phenomena. But you are emotionally stressed.
Correct.
Because of the very way we have evolved our brain and everything, those emotional stress, you have somehow to come out of it. The only way to come out of it is to have an emotional connection with other people in the society, in the family. Now, coming to the moral compass thing, I don't know, personally, I don't think religion has made people more moral than you look at the kind of killing happening all the time. In the name of religion, you are excused to kill anybody.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
And where is that's the ultimate immorality, is to kill another person. Forget about, this is one is, in the name of religion, you oppress people, you don't allow them to have money, you don't allow them to have land, property of any kind. Particularly in Indian context, Dalits, in the name of religion, you can get into any kind of war. I don't think religion has given us anything.
So where will the moral compass come from? Science also hasn't really, with its deep involvement with
phenomenon.
war and...
No, science is also, a true scientist has to be honest. The morality and ethics, the foundation is
a true man
honest.
of religions also has to be honest.
No, not necessarily. You can't be honest if, for example, if someone says that the God doesn't exist, if someone says that your religion, what is written is wrong, but then you will not be able to accept this, then obviously you cannot be honest, right? Honesty comes when you accept, like exactly what experiment truth Gandhiji said. Even although he was supposed to be called religious, he was ready to accept he was proved wrong, right? If you look at from the context of science, as I told you, right, you make an hypothesis and you want to prove that your hypothesis is wrong. So you have to be very honest to do that, right? Otherwise, you will try to prove on yourself. That's the most dishonest thing, right? So once your honesty is there, then other things will follow. Ethics, morality, and other things. How you define ethics, morality, that can be small change at the time, which kind of context and everything. But honesty is the primary to all of these things. Coming to where it comes from, it is there as an evolved phenomena. That's exactly, it's a natural phenomena of cooperative and sharing in people who live in groups, animals which live in groups. And sometimes they live in groups with blood relationship. Sometimes they live in groups where there is no blood relation, they simply make a group. Everywhere, what has enabled that social life in animal kingdom is because of cooperation and sharing, right? And people have done experiments, people have done observations on these kind of things, and how people and how animals, including macaques, like they cooperate with each other and share the resources or share the reward of the teamwork. It's inherent property that is there in our brain, and we have evolved with those kind of properties. And for example, one of the things we also have to talk about in morality and ethics is you actually trust people. Right? When you start distrusting, obviously everything you distrust, and you try to ready to kill them.
Correct.
The trust is actually a naturally evolved phenomena. Even today, how many times you are worried that person who is sitting next to you in the train or in the flight is going to do something, right? Or you're going in a crowded mall, someone is going to snatch your purse.
Yes. There might be that risk.
Vigilant, but you still think that amongst the 1 million people around you, maybe one or two may be of that kind, right? Invariably, you trust people.
Yeah. Right? So what you're saying is that the moral character of human beings
comes
from
naturally evolved phenomena.
Naturally evolved sociality of cooperation and trust, which I guess in a way, and that leads me to maybe the last part of the conversation, is that the modern science has sort of led us to so much risk society, what many commentators call the risk society, and with war and climate change to be two major examples of that risk. How do people start putting trust in, for example, an institution like modern science? What do you think is how probably how do we steer the future?
So again, taking one step back, all our biases, in our perception, in our belief system, in our faith, all these emergent properties of one inherent features. Although everything is evolved, there are something which is very positive, like compassion, cooperation and sharing, empathy. These all evolved, it's there in animals too. The one thing which is also affecting us, because all of us evolve with certain limited ability to perceive our surroundings, right? We can see only certain colors, wavelength, right? By light. For example, butterflies can see you under UV light. We can't see under UV light. Bats can hear and visualize things using ultrasonic waves. We can't even perceive ultrasonic waves, or even radio waves we can't perceive. So our ability to see the world is so limited because our sensory organs are evolved in a particular range of capabilities. That's what world we build it. Once you start making this the kind of world that you are based on your perception, and then you automatically, all other things also evolved or emerged in a societal way, in the same way. And it's a very artificial living, right? If it is a natural living of 20, 30 people, perhaps many of these things would not have happened. Once you start living in thousands of people in the same location, and now millions of people, a lot of prejudices will come out because each one is perceiving it differently. Now, what is important to change this in general public or among scientists too, is that unless you have an evidence, and that evidence is beyond your own perception, beyond human perception, you should not accept it, right? Is exactly what I gave you that example of, sun going around us. It's our perception. But the reality is the earth is going around it, or you'll never even feel that we are moving around the sun, right? And that is reality. For that there is evidence. And now such kind of evidence is generated in places like our research institutions. So people should have the confidence, I don't want to use the word faith, should have the confidence that these are the people going to provide evidence, and this evidence is important for our coming out of our perception and biases, and that we should do. It could be societal biases, it could be related to medicine. For example, now so much of anti-vax movement is happening. Now, if I produce sufficient evidence that vaccine is useful, vaccine is harmless, vaccine is going to help the society at large, reduces the health burden and everything.
Right.
And that evidence, people should take it with confidence.
Yeah.
They may or may not
I
be
see
able
what
to.
you're saying. Yeah. No, I think this is a very, very long and complex conversation, actually. But thank you, Shashi, for agreeing to start this conversation on how do we understand masculinity in science, and how do we go about changing the very dominant toxic cultures that we live in. So, in the last bit, would you like to say something to young boys coming into science, young men coming into science, men who are already in science, particularly on gender identity and how to, navigate their way through a very dominant masculine culture?
So, just to repeat what I already said, perhaps summarizing, is we live in a society full of biases and prejudices, right? And
Gender bias being a very
gender
big
bias
one.
is the most important one. The reason why I tell you gender bias comes at the top is that there's 50% of the population, right? And all our life we are dealing with the female gender in our life, as mother, as sisters, wife, daughter, all
Colleague.
colleague come later. I'm talking about just in our life. When I say a personal life, so we cannot live without that, right? This organization, which is a natural phenomenon. Now, if this gender gap is removed in our mind, that is that inequality, in the way we pursue men and women, and reject masculinity, and and they treat both of them are equal. Automatically, you start treating everything else also in the same way, right? So you will reduce the caste differences, you reduce religion differences, language dependent differences, class differences, racial difference, everything. You start seeing the whole world in a very different way, because you grow up in a family where everybody is equal, and then you start seeing in an organization everybody is equal, and
Professional.
class in the school, in the college, and in the professional life. And first you remove gender based prejudices from the mind, and then everything else start looking much, completely new perception when you start seeing the world.
And it probably should begin with the self-examination, no?
Exactly.
Of what does it
Obviously,
mean
it
to
is
be
for
a
self.
man.
You should not try to think that will through some process and structural changes we should bring gender equity. That's important. You need top-down approach.
Crucial.
But what is important is actually each one of us have to change our attitude. That's it. Automatically, everything else will come up, because it's something which is, it's if you are to comply with, because there is a rule, because there is some structural change have been introduced in the organizational matters kind of thing.
That way,
Then you seem, because I'm complying, it's like every rule I have to comply, I have to
see.
pay taxes.
Exactly.
I have to somehow manage to pay taxes. I'll also try to hide my income and not pay taxes. And then they say, oh, you also do it. Superficially, you think you are accepting gender equity, but undercurrent is still there. That's not going to change the world.
Yeah. So I think that's probably a good note to end on. Thank you, Shashi. Thank you so much.
Allowing me to express my opinion.
Yes. Thank you so much.